So I understand there was a question about security and privacy as it relates to the FICO Analytic Cloud, so just let me spend 30 seconds on that before we get into this rather grandiose title of this presentation. So the FICO, one of the significantly differentiating characteristics of our cloud offers is going to be the fact that it is a fully hybrid offer, right? So all FICO products will be available via whatever channel you choose, right? And you'll be able to choose them in an on-prem mode, in a fully cloud mode, or in a fully hybrid mode, right? And you'll be able to migrate your sort of solutions that we provide to you or the services that we provide to you across any of those delivery channels. So in other words, we make it completely transparent. So in order to actually achieve that, we have to build the FICO Analytic Cloud in a risk management framework that allows us to sort of fully interact with your organizations the way we do today, right? So the FICO Analytic Cloud to start off with is going to be built on a ISO 27001 baseline with a PCI overlay to start. As we start to move into other industry verticals, then we'll start to sort of build out the other standards that we comply with. So once we get into healthcare offers, we'll be adding HIPAA compliance, and so forth and so on. So from the beginning or from the get-go, right, everything that we do in the cloud is built to a very secure set of standards, and all of the products are offered within that framework from day one. So does that answer that question about security and privacy? Yep. Okay, so the future of technology and financial services. Well, I think if I had this crystal ball, I probably wouldn't be standing here talking to you. I'd probably be somewhere else. But so let me just talk about a few other. Oh, I have to do this, don't I? Right. So again, I won't belabor this point because Stuart, I think, talked about it. As you can tell, we're very interested at FICO, in, if you like, the phenomena that's been going on around Chase. Let me just offer another slightly different perspective from Stuart's view, is if you actually think about, all of the effort that's required to build all of the workflow systems and process around having 5,000 people now responsible for a compliance remit that didn't exist before. So I think that becomes a very, very interesting trend. Anybody, and again, we've heard about the CFPB and we've heard about, the OCC and all of the organizations who are now providing oversight within the financial services sector. I think compliance becomes, one of those sort of big IT trends that has been creeping up on us year over year over year. And if you don't have process and systems in place, it just becomes harder and harder to comply. It becomes a people issue, right? Because at the end of the day, security and compliance is fundamentally about traceability, audits, and artifacts, right? Did I do what I said I was going to do? Can I prove that I said what I was going to do? And can I actually show you the documentation to prove that? So moving on to Stuart's other point, hyper disruption. So this is the third platform slide, and it's probably not as clear as we would like it to be, but at the end of the day, it comes down to a once every 20 to 25 years in this very short-lived spectrum that has been information technology. We change the way we actually deliver it. The latest platform is, what we're calling the third platform because it's the third one. And, as Stuart said, it's made up of these 5 different components, right? Social media, big data, what are the other ones? Phone, and mobile. So, and I think what this actually leads to at the end of the day, right? So I think there's 2 factors that come into play here, right? One is this leads us into the cloud world, which I'm obviously going to talk a lot more about. But what it really talks about, I think what it really leads to at the end of the day is the consumerization of IT, right? So I'm sure everybody's heard about this, this concept of the consumerization of IT, and what it is the process of everybody and your smartphones and the applications that you use every day, and if you like, the younger generation's exposure to Facebook, Twitter, smartphones, applications, and all of that sort of stuff creates a usage expectation, right? And the usage expectation of those devices and how you interact with people every day bleeds over into what you expect when you come to work, and it bleeds over into every interaction you have with every organization that you deal with. So, because this is about the future, what I'm actually going to do now is give you all these sort of really bland details as to, what this actually means. So the third platform I think is really interesting. 90% of the new growth in IT is around one of those 5 criteria. The cloud, mobile, social, and the other 2, right? 90%, right? So annual spending on second platform stuff, client server, ERP, all of the stuff that actually lives in your data centers today, 1%. Right? So if that's not a shift, if that's not a dramatic shift, then I'm not sure what would qualify. So where does that lead us? That leads us into sort of the next contextual element is, why is this happening? The consumerization, we're going to have to think of an easier word than that, of IT, which is also, otherwise described as the age of the customer, right? So we go through the Industrial Revolution, through the age of distribution, getting goods and services in the hands of the consumers faster. We move into the beginning of the age of information, and all the age of information actually did was enable the age of the consumer. Right? So everything these days is around your customer, right? Who's your customer? Why are they your customer? How do I make them a better customer? What products does this customer consume? How do I actually communicate with this customer? Do I actually want to keep this person as a customer? Everything revolves around those questions. More than a quarter of IT spend going forward is going to be around customer-facing solutions. Right? So it's not going to be around, back-end data analytics. It's not going to be around back-end, internal systems. It's all going to be around building systems that allow you to communicate more effectively with your customers and answer the questions we were just talking about. That is quite a dramatic shift. Right? So we're going to double the amount of money that we spend between 2012 to the end of next year, end of next year, right, on systems that actually allow us to interact with our customers. And of course you're all thinking, well, how does that apply to me? Right? That's the problem with these big broad statistics. It's like, how does that relate to the world I live in today? And of course we can't forget mobile. Everybody has to have a mobile strategy these days, and I mean that in all sincerity. Everybody has to have a mobile strategy today. Right? Most people will choose to interact with you over a smartphone application if you give them the channel to allow them to interact with you over a smartphone application. It is the preferred channel of choice, by almost every generation now. The fastest growing segment on Twitter today is what age group? Anybody know?
75 to 100.
Actually, strangely, you're close. 50 to 64 is the fastest growing. Now, again, we could sort of say, okay, well, that's because we've gone from 3 to 20, right? But actually, no, as a normalized measure, the fastest growing group of people utilizing Twitter today, and I have absolutely no understanding as to why, right, is people aged from 50 to 64. Right, so anybody that thinks that social media is only for, the generation, whatever they are, right, X's, Y's, the young guys, right, it's not true. It covers all groups, all genres. Everybody wants to interact with you via social media or a smartphone application. So who has a mobile strategy today? Either, for you to talk to your customers or for your customers to talk to their customers. Well, that would be an opportunity then, wouldn't it? So Stuart talked about these, so I won't dwell on these too much. I think they're actually very insightful as to where the spend is going, and what I'm actually going to do is sort of talk about where the money's getting spent that reinforces, these sort of, current challenges. This was the other table, so, obviously the technologies that we can apply to solve the problems, right? So how does that translate into a set of spend patterns? software as a service. So the single largest transition that we are making as an industry, as an IT industry, or as consumers of IT, right, is we are moving all of our application and infrastructure development, right, into a set of more readily accessible applications. And when I say readily accessible, I mean you can actually get them in a time that can have a realistic impact on your business in the short term. So I can buy a pre-configured application in a cloud-delivered model that allows me to solve a real problem in my business in a very short period of time. So what about the banks, or what about financial services in general? To just dispel the myth, hopefully once and for all, or at least amongst another group of sort of 30 or 40 people, financial services are the single largest consumer of cloud services in the industry today. So anybody that tells you that the banks don't buy cloud services and the banks won't consume services in the cloud, or that the cloud is inherently insecure, well, you know, that part, the cloud could be inherently secure depending on how you're doing it. But banks and financial services institutions do consume cloud services. Feel free to stop me as we go along here. Do we have time for questions? I'm not sure. This is a bit of a sprint, so I'm not sure we have time for questions. But so to just extend that, so if you're consuming services from, you know, within the cloud, so if you're buying SaaS offers, the platform approach, so the ability to actually buy a platform in a cloud that it not only provides a single solution but allows you to build, you know, more solutions. What this pie chart, can you actually see that? What this pie chart is showing is that on one of the latest surveys that we had done, 56% of people think the platform approach is significantly important compared to just buying individual applications. So it's not just about consuming a single application in a cloud, it's about being able to establish a cloud strategy that gives you a platform to integrate all of your applications together. And of course, where would a presentation on the future be without a brief nod to the big data challenge? So I love this quote. This is another slide that I stole from Stuart. It's actually not in Scottish, but you know, I could probably translate it if I had a moment. So we're starving for information. We're drowning in information and starving for wisdom. Obviously, it's a slide that you would expect to hear from FICO. And to just give you an indication, now, I think, you know, the folks in this room are very sort of analytics aware, so to speak. You use analytics every day to help you run your businesses. But I think some of these statistics are startling, right? Is the differentiation between people who will be using an analytics approach to helping them run their business today compared to 2 years from now. Right, so 75 to 99%. How do you expect that to change? So that is a reasonably significant change. I think what we can draw from this slide, right, is the fact that the tools have arrived, right? The tools are now have arrived, they are available, they are much simpler to use. Obviously, to get the plug-in for the FICO Analytic Cloud, you know, our ability to deliver analytics in a readily accessible cloud-based solution, you know, just make that even easier.